Taxi Driver from 1976. This is a film directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, and
Heard of
Sybil
him.
Shepherd. Yeah, I think everyone's probably heard of all these folks in the film, but I'll read the plot summary anyway, in case there are some people that aren't aware of this movie. A mentally unstable veteran works as a nighttime taxi driver in New York City, where the perceived decadence and sleaze fuels his urge for violent actions. So this film I wanted to include here because I think not only does it do a very good job, in my view, of capturing a main character who is very lonely, but in terms of when I was talking about earlier solutions to things, he definitely takes the wrong path and a path that can be tempting when you are feeling disalone and isolated. And tempting means he's essentially projecting his feelings and anger at the fact that he is so lonely. He has no friends. He lives by himself. He just sort of sits at home, watches TV, eats like TV dinner, basically. And she takes that out on everybody else and sort of blames society and the city and, oh, there's some scum everywhere. And he can't deal with his own issues. So instead, he's like projecting that out to others. And, that is something that in the darkest moments when you are feeling very lonely, sometimes it does manifest as anger, not at oneself, but you sort of turn it out to the rest of the world. And he definitely responds that way in this film and takes it all the way to a very violent end of the movie, which again is believable for what this character is. And I'm it's sort of helping you understand, not like condone at all, but understand where people that lash out like this kind of come from. Does that kind of resonate with you when you were seeing it too?
Totally resonates. And that's sort of the brilliance of this movie and Robert De Niro's towering performance is
Yeah.
that it drives empathy, for even the most troubled
Right.
characters. You sort of understand, or you try to understand, and you empathize with that condition. So yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
resonates a lot.
Right. The grounding the main character. A lot of this is Paul Schrader's script as
Yeah.
well, and yes, De Niro and Scorsese too. But that he's able to have a main character that is so revolting and does such terrible
Hmm.
things, but is also very damaged, and you understand his whole journey down to down to the very end. And the parts of that film too, where he's trying to do the things that I think do help with loneliness, which is find somebody else that you can share a connection with, and I don't say like latch onto them, but you kind of use them to a connection with somebody else to kind of move yourself out of loneliness. And that Sybil Shepherd, but unfortunately, he has, I think, just too many issues where he can't even relate to her, and he's not really into her as for her own sake or trying to get to know her as a
No.
person. It's more just like, well, you kind of look attractive, so I'm going to assume that you're not one of the scum, and I'm going to take you
Right.
around. But then the second that she's like, wait a second, like you're taking me to like a porno theater, like this is kind of weird, which is
Yeah.
totally the right reaction and totally
Yeah.
normal. He then turns on her too and is like, oh,
Yeah.
well, then if she's, then no one can save me. And then he really goes down the path of deciding to lash out in a violent way, first against politicians and then against other criminals.
Yeah. And I think the other big thing is, at least for me, why you empathize a little bit, or at least try to, is because you do see him at points where he can be very charming,
Yes.
where
Yes.
he can put it on somehow, which I think grounds it in a lot more of a human kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
versus if this was all about somebody just being one note about,
Right.
about the thing that he is struggling with. I don't think you'll have that kind of empathy, or you wouldn't get like a total picture. So there's something about the juxtaposition of, you know, all sides of him that you see in this film, which it's a full person, which goes a
Exactly.
long way.
Right, right. And even in the end, when he decides to, save that teenage prostitute, Jodie Foster's character, and
Hmm.
goes after her pimp and try to basically
Hmm.
free her. That is a heroic act. It's not something that individuals are supposed to do. Like that's why we have law enforcement. So
Right.
it's not like you are again condoning it, but at the same time, he's kind of lashing out at the right people at the end. And actually, the end of this movie too. I hadn't seen this in a while, maybe like 10 years since rewatching it for the podcast. What did you make of the ending? Like he comes back and he seems, is he now no longer lonely? I was trying to figure this out, like what the ending is supposed to mean. when he basically gets back in his cab and he seems fine and he's just kind of drive around, sees Sybil Shepherd again, and then the movie, you know, kind of ends. Like, how did you interpret him getting over this? Is he like cured or something, or is it just again that false face that he's putting on and something else could trigger him later?
Oh yeah, this halo only stays till one evening, maybe the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's this is like a serious mental health condition in my mind. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he gets cured just like that at all. I think he'll find like a new cause, and in some ways he's taken away that, oh, I was appreciated, and I'm a hero now
Right.
uh in what I've done, and that can create more problems, frankly, because you're not actually,
Right.
and the thing you did wasn't the right thing. I mean, maybe it was right in some ways because you were going after bad people for maybe for the right cause.
Mm-hmm.
Child prostitution is definitely not good,
No. No.
but I don't, he could have gone after anybody. So I don't know if this actually propels him to do even more, because now he's been rewarded for it in like a weird way. So
That's a really
I
good
think
point.
this only gets worse.
Yeah. Yeah, and then with the ending too, that he is sort of how he's created a hero. Like he's basically called a hero in the press and on the news.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he had his worldview before was very black and white. There's scum
Yeah.
everywhere and I'm the hero. And then the press is the same way. Like they have to be like, oh, this guy's a hero. Like they're trying to create a scenario that is not black, that is black and white as well, which sort of, I guess, turns it back on you as like the audience or just media in general too, of like, well, you guys are kind of doing the same thing he's doing, which is boiling things
Yeah.
down to a very black and white situation, and really nothing is, which is kind of an interesting, interesting thing to say at the end of the movie too. But no, I think this film is definitely a masterpiece. I mean, even from like a production design standpoint, the music, the way that the city, like you can smell like New York City through this movie. It
Mm-hmm.
smells gross. The
Mm-hmm.
70s version of New York,
Mm-hmm.
with like the smoke everywhere and the desaturated camera stuff at the end. I mean, it really is an experience. I hadn't watched it in a while, but I knew immediately it had to be on this list because it still sits with me all the time because it's such a powerful movie.
Totally. I mean, this is like a masterpiece, and it should be, probably is in like the top 10 pantheon of
Yeah,
movies
yeah,
ever made. But the thing of what you're saying is that all the crafts and the cast and everybody is performing at the top of their game, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel pretentious. It doesn't
right.
feel like
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff is, in service of nothing. Like everything feels very purposeful. It's in service of the story and the mood that they're trying to create, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also somehow very effortless, which is such a hard balance to strike, because you
Yeah.
can see through those choices. Like, not to kind of compare it to Empire of Light, which is flawed in many ways, but
Mm-hmm.
there, a lot of these choices, they don't necessarily serve the story, because often the story itself is also not, it's not hanging together. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
unfair for me to compare
Right.
Taxi Driver to any other movie.
Yeah. Especially Empire of
But
Light, but
especially Never Alive,
yeah.
or yeah, but I think that's what is so amazing about this movie, is that it just feels very effortless, but then leaves you, like, I think I told you after I watched this movie on text or something, I couldn't sleep that night because
Yeah.
it sort of haunts you and stays with you. And performances across the board, oh my gosh, every single person, even the taxi, I forget his name, but the taxi operator guy in the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
every single person is like incredible. And Scorsese was so young, right? This is like, how
I
old is he
know.
when he made this movie?
He's, I think, in his early 30s. He's in the movie too. He plays like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of the passengers in the cab. But it is
Mhm.
incredible just to, and De Niro too was at the beginning of his career as well. Just all these, and obviously Jodie Foster too, who just puts on an incredible performance
Incredible
at the age of
performance.
13 or however old she is. It's just what she can, like, that world weariness that she brings to that character is incredible. But yeah, it's like everyone really is firing on the top of on all cylinders, top of their game. But it all comes together in something that, you're right, it's not, it feels earned, I guess, which is like some of
Mhm.
the other things, not to go back to Empire Light, but that part of the, especially the racial stuff and that didn't feel earned to me. It felt kind
Didn't
of like
feel
tacked
earned.
on. And this,
Yeah.
every single frame does. Um, you know, It's a work that is like no other, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, on the performance side, like it's so lived in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what Robert De Niro is doing by like the way he looks at Harvey Keitel when he's having that conversation, when he visits. There's just so much on his face and his eyes. Like you're seeing his own mental condition the way we've seen it so far, but you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it getting triggered in all sorts of ways. And you see him kind of what we talked about, Meryl, on Sophie's Choice. You can see the actor as the character thinking through and
Yes.
processing what is being thrown at them, which is when I see that done in a way that these people can do it, it just, I'm just completely speechless. How can you do that? It's just amazing. And then with Jodie and him, you see this odd connection because they are, I mean, there's some literal things, the way she's putting sugar on the jam on the
Oh
toast.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then there's like an actual kinship of sort, whether it's real or not, or how much of it is projected. But you really see that these people are, she's also damaged in her own way
Mm-hmm.
for whatever has happened in her life.
Right, right.
So yeah, amazing.
It is. It totally is. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.